Looks
the
like
leather jacket versus the hair.
Looks like Tom is deciding on if he wants to keep his hand or not. Oh, he's on 5 and he's scrying.
Man, tough. Well, this Infect deck is extremely explosive. I mean, it has the potential to close the game out very, very quickly on very few resources. So even though Tom is down to 5 cards, I certainly wouldn't count him out.
So it looks like Tom is going to bottom his scry. We can see here Harlan is 11-3, currently 14th place on our leaderboard on Blue-Red Twin. Tom Ross is also 11-3, playing Blue-Green Infect.
So one thing that's interesting about this is we've seen this Blue-Red Twin deck a lot. A lot of the games we've seen have been against decks like the company decks that have a lot of those big green and white creatures. Tom's creatures are a lot smaller, and that means that Harlan is actually able to potentially answer everything that Tom plays. Snapcaster Lightning Bolt is a really good combo against these Infect decks.
It definitely is. So we're going to see Harlan's going to start out with a Misty Rainforest and pass. Tom's going to follow suit with a Wooded Foothills and pass, which does not bode well for Tom. He definitely wants to get on the board early. Harlan's going to go ahead and fetch with his Misty Rainforest to get an island. And I imagine we're going to see a Serum Visions here. Or no, he's just going to play his land, so it comes into the battlefield untapped. That's Sulphur Falls, one of the buddy lands from Innistrad. And pass back to Tom, who's going to fetch on his end step. I imagine we're just going to see a Breeding Pool tapped here to save some life, and then he's going to go on with his turn.
Yeah, Tom really wants to get something going. In a longer game, things get a lot more difficult because Harlan is going to have developed his mana and have multiple tools that he can make use of between counter spells. Specifically, Dispel is a really, really good one against all the pump spells that Tom has, and also all the lightning bolts.
Now, Tom does have 2 forests in his deck, but Harlan has Blood Moon. So if he is able to find a land off of this draw here from Remand and a draw from his turn, he might just be able to land a Blood Moon and shut this game out. And he's not able to find that land. He is just going to go ahead and Serum Visions, which is going to scry 2 cards. Lightning Bolt and Remand, those are both powerful Magic cards.
Yeah, even still, the main thing with Blood Moon is you just want to land your Blood Moon before your opponent has a large board presence, or I should say larger board presence than you. So even if Tom doesn't really do much of anything on his turn, next turn will still be a great time for Harlan to land this Blood Moon.
So Harlan is just going to go ahead and play that. Steam Vents tapped. He does have a Spell Snare in his hand, so I imagine he's hoping that this turn is just Tom replaying that Spellskite and then nothing else.
And this is perfect for Harlan. Harlan's been able to keep the board clear. He's going to deploy his Blood Moon. Harlan's going to basically still have all the access to mana that he would want because he has that basic island. And Harlan has the potential to lock Tom out of this game.
So it looks like Tom does have that Verdant Catacombs on the battlefield. He can't find a basic forest. He also has this other forest in his hand. So he still would be able to play some games here if he does happen to to get Blood Moon, but he is going to fetch a Breeding Pool here, and Harlan has decided to not play that Blood Moon. I think he wants to Vendilion Click first just to get some information.
Yeah, I think Harlan might be playing this a little too conservatively. I think it would have been to his advantage to just slam the Blood Moon. Even if you let Tom get a forest, Tom isn't going to be able to cast any of his blue spells. He's going to only have 1 green source, and you're still going to be crippling him, especially considering Tom's at a mulligan to 5.
And he's not going to be able to use that Inkmoth Nexus, which is extremely important.
Absolutely.
So we are going to see a Snapcaster flashback this Spell Snare on the Blighted Agent from Tom. Tom does have another Blighted Agent. So if Harlan's able to find a land here, we could definitely see Blood Moon Lightning Bolt. And there is that Blood Moon. He does have a creature on the battlefield. He's going to attack for 2. And at this point, Tom does have a couple of turns to try and find something and get some action going. But at this point, he has just 1 green mana to do things, and that's about it.
Yeah, and currently, Tom, he doesn't have really anything going on. He can't activate his Nexus because it's a mountain. He hasn't drawn any other creatures. And these Infect decks are really, really light on creatures. They just don't have that many.
So we see Harlan here is just going to be attacking with a Snapcaster Mage, pass the turn back. Tom does find a Glistener Elf. It is going to die to Lightning Bolt. Harlan's also going to Vendilion Click Tom, get a little information, put some more threats on the board. Oh, he's just going to click himself to get rid of his other click, draw a card. He also has an Electrolyze in his hand that he can still use later on to get in some damage or draw some cards. And it looks like Harlan is firmly in the driver's seat in this game. Just going to attack for 5 more against Tom Ross after playing his Steam Vents and pass it back. And these players are playing Lightning Quick, and that's because there isn't much choices here. Tom is real constricted on mana.
Yeah, and we can see how the red removal, being burn-based, can be really effective against the infect creatures if you can kill them as they come down. If the infect creatures come down and then Tom gets to untap with them, all of his pump spells can act as protection spells, but Harlan does have the opportunity to actually just control what Tom is doing with his burn spells, unlike the decks that we've seen before that have Loxodon Smite or Knight of the Reliquary.
Now, we've had Harlan on camera a couple times this weekend, and this is the first time where we've seen Blood Moon put in a lot of work. Since they are in his main deck, I have to imagine in all of the matches that he's played off camera, he's probably pummeled some people and made it so they couldn't even play Magic. But for now, let's take a look at the sideboard options for the two players and see what we think they're going to do. So Tom Ross has 4 copies of Nature's Claim, 2 Twisted Image, 2 Spell Pierce, a Dispel, a Rancor, a Wild Defiance, 2 Relic of Progenitus, a Pithy Needle, and a Necropede. What do you think he's going to go with this?
So regarding the twin combo that Harlan has in his deck, Nature's Claim and Twisted Image can be, well, Nature's Claim specifically can be really good against the twin combo just because you can kill the Splinter Twin. Also, there's a good chance that Harlan is going to be bringing in some number of Spell Skites, and Twisted Image and Nature's Claim are both good against that. Spell Pierce can also be a good card to counter the combo from resolving while also protecting Tom Ross's creatures from burn spells. The one card that's going to be, I think, the best at protecting Tom's creatures against burn spells is going to be Wild Defiance.
I definitely like Wild Defiance. I've played Infect a little bit, more so in Standard when it was just mono green, and Wild Defiance is a beast.
Yeah, another thing that he could consider bringing in is Pithing Needle too. I mean, you can always basically bring that in.
Harlan does have 1 Dispel, 1 Vandal Blast, 1 Engineered Explosives, 1 Ancient Grudge, 1 Negate, 1 Roast, 1 Spellskite, 1 Anger of the Gods, 2 Videlkin Shackles, an Izzet Staticaster, 2 Jace, Architect of Thought, a Pia and Kirinular, and a Keranos, God of Storms. What do you think Harlan's going to be doing here?
So I think he'll definitely be bringing in the Spellskite and the Pia and Kiran Nalaar, as well as the Izzet Staticaster. I think those are the cards that have the best chance of having a big impact on the game. I also think that the Vidalcan Shackles, the Jace, the Keranos, and the Roast, probably the Negate and Dispel you can make an argument for also all coming in. I expect Harlan to take out a lot of his twin combo and turn it into more of a blue-red control deck with all those cards that I mentioned.
Yeah, I can see that. Like you said before, Tom does have some creatures in his deck, not as many as some of the Naya decks that we've been seeing, and they're nearly not as beefy, so the blue-red twin deck can just turn into this control-style deck and try and handle all of Tom's threats. And it's pretty sweet that Blood Moon is also just another way to turn off those Inkmoth Nexus that Tom might have.
Yeah, I think Harlan could also bring in Ancient Grudge and Roast if he really wanted to. He can basically bring in all 15 cards of his sideboard.
That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, transformational.
Yeah, so while the players finish up sideboarding and shuffling here, let's go ahead and talk about the Oath of the Gatewatch pre-release. So this is going to be coming up here next weekend, and if you're in the Roanoke area, you should come down to the StarCityGames.com Game Center, and you can get this limited edition exclusive Oath of the Gate Hop playmat that is free to all players that play in any of the flights at the Game Center on StarCityGames.com. Now you can go to go.starcitygames.com/pre-release to pre-register, which is something I suggest you do if you'll be in the area because these flights fill up quick all weekend long.
Yeah, and all of these playmats are just so fun. I mean, I have a bunch that I've acquired over the past 2 years, and I give them out to friends, family, even people who don't even like Magic. They just think they're cool. I mean, they have cool illustrations. They're just fun. They're cute. Everybody likes them.
Absolutely. So again, go.starcitygames.com/pre-release for details and to be able to pre-register. Make sure you get in nice and early so you're not stuck out in the cold trying to get these Oath of the Gate Hop playmats for the pre-release. So again, Harlan Fearer. I'll get his name right at some point.
Practice makes perfect.
He's currently 14th on our leaderboard, which means he came in this weekend and had 2 buys. Makes it a little easier to get to this spot. He's 11-3 with his unique build of Blue-Red Twin. Tom Ross, however, who usually has buys, had to go hard mode to get here. He is 11-3. These guys are both playing for a chance at top 8. That's not a guarantee that they will be in top 8, as there are quite a few people coming into this round on 33 points, but there are going to be some of them that make top 8 and some of them that don't. It looks like there was a 134-pointer and 2 33-pointers going down to 8th place, so there is going to be a chance for 2 or 3 of these 33-pointers will make it in, depending on how the rest of the matches that actually played happen to fall.
Yeah, I believe that these 2 players both have tiebreakers that are quite good, so I have to imagine that there's a good chance that this is a win and in for both of them, although certainly not set in stone.
So Tom is going to lead off here with a fetch off of his Wooded Foothills for a forest, and we have to hope here that he has a 1-drop. And he has a Relic of Progenitus, which is going to be a card that he's going to be able to use to turn off Snapcaster Mage. Now, it's very good if Harlan decided to go to the control plan, but not very good at interacting with the Splinter Twin combo.
Yeah, for sure. And this is a bit of a surprising card for Tom to have, in my opinion, but Tom's the boss. He knows what he's doing.
So it looks like Harlan is going to lead us off with a Steam Vents, untap, take 2 damage, and cast a Serum Visions. And it looked like there was a Pia and Kieran Nalar in that scry, which I have to imagine that he left on top of his library. And he also found an Anger of the Gods off of that Serum Vision. So there we see 2 of the cards that he sided into his deck.
Yeah, I believe I also saw an Is It Staticaster, so I believe that Harlan, like we talked about before, is probably just on the full control plan in this matchup.
And Staticaster seems fabulous against Infect. So Tom's just going to go ahead and play an Inkmoth Nexus and pass. Harlan's going to respond with the same play with a land and pass, and then we're back on Tom for his 3rd turn. It looks like he has quite a few lands in his hand, along with a Twisted Image, maybe another spell or 2. So let's see what kind of options he has.
Yeah, and in the first game, you're going to see Tom most of the time try to play a lot more aggressively because that twin is sort of looming over that game 1 and forcing Tom to attack aggressively and attack quickly. Whereas in the post-board games, you're probably going to see Tom slow down a lot more. He's going to be trying to deploy a threat at a time where he can protect it rather than just always jam it.
So it looks like Tom is just going to play a Windswept Heath and pass the turn. Harlan's going to fetch his Misty Rainforest into a Steam Vents on Tom's end step, and let's see where he goes from here. So he draws another Lightning Bolt. So it looks like Harlan's hand is just a couple of Lightning Bolts, a Staticaster, a Pia and Kieran Nalar, and an Anger of the Gods. No twin combo piece to be found there, but he does have a lot of ways to interact with what Tom is trying to do. And again, Pia and Kieran Nalar are just quickly becoming this card that we see everywhere in Modern, and it's just very, very strong.
Yeah, really, really good card. One of the great things about it is when you want to play a more controlling game plan, things can get a little awkward when all you have is answers. But the fact that Pia Kieran Nalar is a card that you can play even when your opponent doesn't have a threat on the board allows you to use your mana a lot more efficiently. And then once you untap with it, you can start attacking with it. It can be a win condition. And if your opponent does start deploying threats, you can use Pia and Kieran Nalar to trade off its tokens, shoot them down. And it just makes it such a well-rounded card, perfect for these decks that are trying to play a more controlling route.
So it's like Harlan is just going to play a land and pass to Tom. He does have a Pendelhaven, and it looks like he's going to try and get in with this Inkmoth Nexus. So Harlan is going to use a Lightning Bolt. I imagine that Tom is going to have some interaction. So there is a Dispel.
Yeah, at some point, Tom needs to find a moment where he can start trading resources. He wants to do so in a way where he can get something kind of favorable out of it.
Yeah, okay, so it looks like Harlan is going to use his Dispel. Tom is going to get that Dispel with the Relic of Progenitus, and Harlan's going to end up with a Lightning Bolt in his graveyard, and Tom is going to have 1 dead Nexus. So Harlan here is just going to fetch with his Scalding Tarn, and I think that we're going to see Mom and Pop Nalar pop onto the battlefield here, bring a couple Thopters along with them, and this is going to be very, very good for Harlan. It's going to put him in a very good spot against Tom's Infect deck. Ooh, and we're going to see Jace instead. Looks like he just wants to draw cards. Who needs threats when you can just draw stuff?
Yeah, I like this play a lot. The Jace accrues more value the longer it sits on the board. The game is not likely to be about Tom's life total. So playing the Jace before the Pia and Kieran Nalar means that Harlan's going to have more card advantage that way. So I like this line of play quite a bit.
So we've got an Island of Videlkin Shackles and an Ancient Grudge here on the cards from Jace. Do you think that's how you split it, or is it just too close to tell what's going to be right or wrong?
Well, it's tough. You really don't want to give him 2 spells, obviously, the Videlkin Shackles and the Grudge. So it's kind of a debate between putting the Island with the Ancient Grudge or the Videlkin Shackles. I think I would have put the Island with the Ancient Grudge. Pairing with the Videlkin Shackles seems not exactly like what I would have done, but I'm sure Tom has his reasons.
So now it looks like Tom does have an Inkmoth Nexus, so that might be why he paired the Island with the Videlkin Shackles instead of the Ancient Grudge. But Harlan is just in a real good spot here.
Yeah, the thing that's a little tricky... Oh, there we go. That makes a lot more sense.
So it looks like we have a Nature's Claim, so Tom just kind of walked Harlan into taking that Vidalcan Shackles along with the island so that he can get rid of it with a Nature's Claim. Giving Harlan some life really isn't going to be all that relevant because he is trying to do infect damage. And it looks like he has this Inkmoth Nexus that he might try to get in some attacks with. It is going to be minus in power because of Jace, but he does have that Pendlehaven to try and pump it up.
Yeah, this is a good opportunity for Tom. Basically, this is a point where Harlan is kind of tapped down on mana a little bit. Tom has a few good options for ways to keep his Nexus alive, and between the Pendlehaven and maybe another combat trick, he might be able to start doing some work on Harlan's. Not so
it looks
much.
like he had a Twisted Image to try and flip that power and toughness around to get in 3 damage, and Harlan just happened to have another copy of Lightning Bolt. It's just solely in control here.
Yeah, that was a particularly rough trade for Tom because not only is Harlan getting ahead on cards with his Jace, but that Lightning Bolt just traded with the Inkmoth Nexus and the Twisted Image being a 2-for-1 in Harlan's favor.
So it looks like Harlan has just been able to draw 4 extra cards off of this Jace and still have it around, and it's going to be relevant for combat on Tom's side. Jace is surprisingly good against Infect out of this twin sideboard.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you get to play Jace on an empty board against a deck that's intending on attacking with creatures, I think Jace is always going to be good.
Yeah. All right, so now we're going to see Pia and Kieran Nalaar from Harlan. Going to bring with it some Thopter tokens, and this is not looking like it's too good for Tom. Again, Harlan is solely in the driver's seat at this point, but never count out Tom Ross. Don't call him the boss for nothing.
Yeah, that is certainly true. And he's still got quite a few cards in hand. Seems like quite a few of them are lands. I think Tom's going to have a very hard time winning this game, but we can really see why so many of these twin decks have all these mid-rangey control cards in their sideboard is because when they play against decks like Infect, they're just so good at controlling them.
So Tom is just going to play a landed pass. Harlan's going to draw for his turn and get into the red zone with a Pia and Kieran Nalaar and 2 Thopters. He does have a fistful of cards, which is a little scary for Tom, but I mean, you got to do what you got to do. Here's another Vidalcan Shackles.
The Vidalcan Shackles is really threatening too because as soon as Tom deploys a threat, Harlan's going to be able to try to take it with the Shackles, and if Tom doesn't actively protect it, the Vidalcan Shackles is essentially going to be a reusable source of removal.
So Tom's just going to go ahead and fetch on Harlan's end step, and he draws another land, which gives him a bunch of lands and what looks like one or at least 2 Nature's Claims in his hand, which really isn't going to do much against this army of creatures that Harlan's starting to deploy here on his side.
Yeah, and Harlan's board is really just a who's who of cards that are good against Infect. I mean, he's got multiple ways to shoot down small creatures. He's got the Vidalcan Shackles that can steal stuff, and the Jace that can just make, you know, no matter how many creatures you have, if they're 1 power, they're not doing any damage.
So it looks like he was able to get an Ancient Grudge and a Spell Snare off of that final Jace activation. It's going to pass the turn back to Tom, and Tom really just has 1 more turn here, and then he could actually just be dead. No, he'll go down to 5. Oh, yeah, he's going to be dead.
Oh, wow, Vidalcan Shackles getting
it is an artifact.
Sacrificed by Pia and Kieran Nalaar. That's a sweet play.
Yeah, so now he's just going to be able to attack with his 3 creatures and then throw them at Tom for lethal if Tom has nothing. I imagine he's going to have to use a Nature's Claim on at least one of those tokens here to try and stay alive. But even then, I think that's going to be...
Yeah, I think he'll be dead anyway because Tom's at 7, so he can sacrifice it in response, knock Tom down to 5. Oh, he's got 2 of them. So that'll keep him alive for 1 more turn, but these are not the trades that Tom needs to make in order to get back in this game.
So it's looking like Harlan's going to let one of them resolve. He's going to take the 2 damage from Pia and Kieran. He's going to go down to 3. Looks like there are a couple more artifacts in Harlan's hand, though. So next turn he's going to be able to attack with that Pia, play something like Engineered Explosives for 0.
Yeah, this is...
and then toss it at Tom.
An embarrassment of riches. This is... I wouldn't be surprised if Tom concedes on this turn.
Oh, especially after seeing this hand. Look at all this.
Yeah. Time to pick up the cards. And there we go.
And there we have it. Old Tom Ross is going to take a loss here with Infect. He's currently going to fall to 11-4. Harlan's going to go to 12-3 and hope that his tie breaks happen to hold on. It looks like coming into this round he was the the highest tie breaks of the 33 pointers by 0.02%. So anything can happen.
Yeah, really, really close. It's good to be on top, but by such a small margin, it's still a little scary. That's some of the fun of the top 8, though, is seeing who actually makes it in when you have all these people that are tied on points.
Yeah, you just got to sweat it a little bit. Now that match was, well, that game in particular was pretty interesting for me. Tom didn't have a very aggressive start, but Harlan just seemed to have everything.